All right, so let's dive in. One of the things I wanted to suggest is that Paul handed me the baton for this meeting, as Grace had handed it to him, and in this idea that we'll host different times depending on what's going on, and so this kind of landed with me today, which I really appreciate. And one of the things I wanted to try and do as we take on new people, and something that we talked about at the very beginning, and I'm diving right in because you guys are short on time, as I understand, Duke. One of the things I'd like to see us do is have a couple of different types of ways that we do these meetings, these gatherings on Zoom. And since Paul's opened it up to a weekly attempt to do this, whoever can be present for it, that gives us more time to be together and more time to cross the threshold and get to know each other and what we're bringing, so to speak. And I think there's an opportunity, because we have more time and it's still early in the game, I believe that we have the time to do that. And so we have meetings where we're setting intent and we want to get things done. We want to build a website, or we want to figure out what needs we're filling with the work we've done. But then there's some meetings where it's just, let's open it up to dialogue, just without intent, and see where it goes. And so I wanted to lead with that example today, for example, of welcoming Ari across the threshold, because we don't feel we've done that wholeheartedly yet in this group. And so my question to Ari, to kind of trigger that open dialogue, is for you to share with us about your activated storytelling. I just read a really beautiful article that you wrote, and I didn't want to share it without asking you, so I figured I'd let you.
Of course, share it. It's public.
Yeah, but I think to have you kind of introduce that concept, where you've come with it. I think it's woven into why you were at Esalen and your work that you do professionally, but also where your heart is at, and how it kind of weaves into where we are, and just where you're at with that. What that's about.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Yeah. Hi, Duke and Grace. I see you guys are driving. I think a very cool shot, very cool Tarantino style shot you got going on. Yeah, so around November of last year, this kind of idea started to grow on me of, I think it was after I watched I don't watch as much as I used to content. And then I watched like one or two dystopian things, I think like a Black Mirror thing and something else. And it just struck me that if all we're putting out is dystopia, then we're going to, as storytellers, then we're going to attract the worst possible versions of the future, right? It's like, and then we have confirmation bias. So it's like people are reading in the news that China's doing this deep state AI thing, and they're seeing an episode before that of Black Mirror or whatever doing that. And then they just assume that's the only possible future, when we know there's an infinity of possible futures. And we know 1,000 other amazing projects that are happening right now that are not, let's say, Black Mirror episodes. So nobody's talking about, they're not being talked about at that kind of pop culture zeitgeisty level. So, I started thinking like, well, what can we do about that as storytellers? I can speak to my people who are storytellers and creators. And I started to think about, well, what kind of story, what would it have to be to incentivize people? What would we have to do to incentivize people, storytellers, to create the kinds of stories that help bring about a more flourishing, that's around the time that I caught the More Beautiful World, Charles' idea. And I kind of incorporated as like the more, a more like bring about a more flourishing world. And then I found, I'm going to do the short version, but then I found this, so there's dystopia and utopia, which are essentially the same thing. Utopia is perfectionism. It's Brave New World. It's just as bad, right? That's not what we're going for. And, when you talk to filmmakers and creators, they're like, oh, there's no conflict in utopia. Why would we want to tell those stories? And then I found this Kevin Kelly term from 2011 called, where he talks about protopias, which are slightly better worlds where we're solving some of our problems and essentially not creating new ones, which I really love. And so I was like, okay, so if storytellers knew that they could, if there was an incentive for storytellers to not set their world, their story world, in a dystopian one, which used to be relevant in the sense of like their dystopia is really about warning signs. It's like, this is what we don't want to happen, but now there's so much of it that it's kind of lost its thing, and we don't want, and it's not utopia, then it's protopia. And I was like, okay, that's like a thing that storytellers need to know but don't know. So how do you build around that? And then I got exposed to more of Charles' stuff, and it was like a parallel thing, and to a couple of other thinkers. There's a guy, Daniel Schmachtenberger, which is amazing. Jordan Hall, like that kind of essentially what's now being referred to as not the intellectual dark web, but the intellectual deep web, which is like much more interesting. And there's a couple of people that come up, and I think Charles probably comes up in those circles as well, but very kind of forward thinking around building coherent communities, which is exactly what we're trying to do with this. And upgrading people's software so they can show up in the world and help steer things in the right direction. And it seems to me that I can help on the storytelling front to get my people, the storytellers, there. So what I realized is like, it's part kind of neurohacking, biohacking, mindfulness, workshop, get people leveled up, because they have to do the work first in order to show up and create these activated stories, as I'm calling them, that can they have to activate themselves before they can activate others, as we all know, if we've been on this journey in different ways. So the latest on this idea, I did a few talks on it and some work, and the latest is I started to think about an activated story commons. Basically, the commons idea is there's no way to incentivize or quantify it right now. Like if you do this, right? But there's not even principles about it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to come up with a series of principles. One being, don't set your story in a dystopian world, set it in a protopian world. Another being, create stories that heal our divides, heal our humanity, heal our, traumas. Another one would be create sense-making stories that help us make sense of the world so we can make better choices, which is one of the issues we have right now. People can't make sense of the world, so they retract. They go into fatalism, nihilism, or despair. They kind of check out. Even friends of mine that are really smart are in that kind of rite of passage right now. Stories that go beyond the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a solo journey. It's a young person's archetype. It's like we defeat evil and then we come back home, and then what? Then life starts. Then you have to like take care of kids and integrate and do all these other things. And there's so few stories set there. So I've got like about 8 principles, but I'd like to crowdsource them and make better ones. And then the commons piece would be essentially, and I'm like a minute away from wrapping it. The commons piece is, it's like a certificate or mark. Like if you're a corporation, you can be a B Corp, people over profits, all these wonderful things. If you're a green, if you're a grower, if you're a food grower, you can be organic or biodynamic, better for the earth, better for you. But if you're a storytelling company or a production company like I am, or a storyteller, there's nothing like that. There's no such thing, which is weird. At first I was like, oh, that's weird that there's nothing there. There's like MPA ratings and there's nothing in the middle. So first I was like disillusioned, and then I was like, oh, that's the opportunity, is to create that activated story commons. So that's where I'm at. There's the idea of a commons, which would be centered around, there's Creative Commons, there's, fair trade and green certifications, there's B Corps, and Duke, you probably have a few more of these that you've looked into. And then there's the principles, which I would like to crowdsource with really influential, interesting storytellers, makers, creators, producers, execs, whatever, just how do we, you could even see a category at Sundance Festival or something about this. You could see, just how Night Foundation found, and these foundations, these nonprofits fund essentially, social good stories or social justice stories. You could almost see like a category emerging, where it's this kind of like, well, if you create stories that help bring about better futures, and there's some way to measure that, because it's all stories, the way we perceive the world is a story, as we know, and we're moving from the old story to the new story, as we know. And so it's like the job is to bring people over to the new story with activated stories. So it's influenced by Charles's work. It's parallel to a lot of things that we're all tapped into, but I'm kind of applying it to like filmmakers, because you would be surprised how many filmmakers come to me with these short films and they're all set in dystopian worlds, which is crazy. So anyway, that's it.
Yeah, I can see Duke and Grace have got to go, but
ciao, Duke and Grace. Thanks for listening to that.
My mind is spinning, Ari. My being is spinning.
Yeah. It's
and for some bizarre reason, the right people are being drawn to this movement. I don't know what it is. This thing. Thing. And you're coming with this filmmaking, content producer kind of aspect of the world. And the Protopian idea is one that I've been now talking about. Like you, to some extent, I feel like I co-opt ideas from other places,
of course, yeah,
and then translate them. So I did a talk to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund in Washington, on Friday, to the whole fund, and I talked to them about Protopia. I talked about from the old story to the new story. I talked about the period of transition. I talked about Charles's work. I talked about reimagining what they can do for the century that we're still trying to work out where we're going with it. And so what I liked about, and I said the Protopia idea, which, and I resonate with it for the same reason you do, is that it says things can get we can sort of have a better future, but there'll still be conflict. That it's not like it's all sort of smooth.
Yeah, solve that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the person who was the chief rabbi of Great Britain until recently, Jonathan Sachs, who, even though I'm not a practicing Jew, I admire him. And he said the challenge of our time is to live with difference. And that doesn't mean to live without connection. It's just that, we're not going to live in a world where we all see the things exactly the same way. It's kind of, how do we live with differences, he puts it. And I think of these topics of repair and healing, and the idea that we need to kind of repair the planet, repair ourselves, heal ourselves. So that feels to me like the work, and Charles has talked about this, and David, Daniel Schmattenberg has talked about it.
Yeah.
And I suppose what I'm doing is taking this idea into what I'd call a large organizational setting. So I've been talking to Estee Lauder, who are a company I know well, was with in New York last week, and they're about beauty. So I'm talking to them about the More Beautiful World 24, and whether they could connect in to it through the aspect of beauty, because they're trying to say beauty is more than skin deep. There's a part of them that is trying to, in a way, express a deeper yearning. And the IMF are confused about who they are in the world. They're trying to create stability in the world, but it's just financial stability. But now they're looking at climate change, and they don't. It's kind of like and so they're saying to me, "Can you come on a retreat with the new head of the IMF and all of her direct reports to help us think?" So in a way, you're sort of taking this message, this kind of idea into your community. I'm trying to take it to my community, and what I'm noticing is that there's this yearning out there for this new story. It's just that nobody's really expressing it in terms that people can kind of get their heads around yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, we understand the dystopia, we've got it, you know, we're experts at it.
Yeah.
It's played to us every single news bulletin. You know, it's like, let's roll from what's going on in Afghanistan this week to what's going on in Aleppo. And by the way, if you wondered whether things were getting bad over here, let's go over to the, you know, the Arctic Circle for a bit. Hi
Right.
guys, and off you go to bed.
Right.
and how are you supposed to react? And I try and let myself just feel the pain.
Yeah.
You know, just without knowing what to do. So what's coming to me, Ari, is that at some point we'll create new circles around us as we get into, you know, the more operational side of what we're doing, if you like. If that ever comes, it'll be more like when we start to bring things to fruition. And I wonder whether around you might create the content producer, the kind of production of this, you know, that because my picture is that there'll be different producers for each hour in different parts of the world who will in a way curate their own content for their part of it. But obviously each part's going to need coordination, and we've got to, in a way, I feel like what I can do is sort of hold the vision of this. And in a way, I want to bring large organizations somehow into this because I've got access into them.
Yeah.
And I've got this vision of them, you know, relaying this on their internal networks and lobbies during the 24 hours. Not all of them, because some of them will find it.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's already companies that are showing the kind of, as Schmachtenberger would say, the game B dynamics, you know, the new story dynamics, which is like the Patagonias of the world, where it's like, you can tell it's no longer about profit and boards and extraction. And it's like, it's as good as you can play in the capitalist game without, you know, without checking out altogether, which is tempting also sometimes. So it's like, it's a transitional thing, but it's like, yeah, the way I think you're thinking about it is like, these companies they have a game B lab almost in the back,
and they've got to
transition to and then they have to be upgraded. You know, the people have to be upgraded to get there.
Yeah, and I've been saying this last week to different organizations in New York, different banks and people like IKEA, Estee Lauder, and then to the IMF. I'm saying that what you call corporate social responsibility is going to become the heartbeat of your organization. Right. You are on a process to become a social enterprise that also generates revenue and other things in a sustainable way in order that you can remain viable.
Right.
But what you see as the outside ring of social good will become the heartbeat of your organization, because that's the only way you can remain relevant. And it's not like people argue against it. All they go is like, how do we get from here, which is a story, you know, how do we get from here to there? And I'm really saying, you're in transition. Give yourself the breathing space to reflect and think.
Right.
Let these ideas kind of land inside your organization. Don't, you know, and let them have their time, because this is not, we can't, even though the problems are urgent, we can't resolve this in a panic.
Totally. Well, that's beautiful. Yeah, thanks for letting me share that, and thanks for sharing that back. And yeah, I can see that it's all, the yearning is out there. There's no question about it. The message is well received every time I talk about it or post about it. And yeah, I feel like I have a responsibility to take this into my community and into my, you know, the first thing I'm trying to do is get this green the bid type model, which is more like greening your production, which is still a problem. So it's like, you got to make this production of the content itself sustainable. So that's coming out soon. And that's a collaboration with a company that does just that for production. And it's basically like for a very specific amount of money, $2,500, you green your production, and you get a green coordinator, you get recycling, you get composting, you get no landfill, and the sets get donated, and it becomes as closed loop as you can, not counting the carbon offset, which would be a kind of add-on because we're not there yet. But if that could be adopted to make the content, and then the content we're making starts to become activated, then you sort of have like a model emerging that's really, it's really the thing we all wish for.
Yeah, and what's coming to mind is that there's an event that just took place in Amsterdam called IBC, International Broadcast something. And
Yeah.
my partner, Ali, is a fellow of the Guild of Television Camera Professionals.
Right.
The first television camera woman in the UK. And what she said that the IBC for the first time, at the end of the whole massive event, they went on this whole recycling of everything.
Yeah.
They had different charities coming to take whatever they could to recycle, to distribute the food.
Totally.
And she's also connected into this worldwide group of essentially television camera men and women, but also filmmakers. I don't know where that fits into this, but it's
totally. Yeah. The unions and the guilds, and, every country has like a version of this. And we have like AICP here, and, the Directors Guild of America, all these. They've all tried, and they're all trying. It's a little better in Hollywood actually than it is on commercials right now. So like there was just 2 articles, because the climate thing is relevant right now in the US because of Greta and the climate strikes on Friday and everything that's happening here. There's a bunch of content come out on Variety and on Hollywood Reporter about how much better it's gotten. So I feel like Hollywood's kind of got their shit together as far as the green production, but they're still outputting non-activated stories. So now they have the level, that's the level up. And then commercials, probably it's like 50-50. Like, so most of the commercials, just, there's no format, which is what I was trying to help with. And then you can level it up to activated stories for companies, for brands. But yeah, I mean, it's feels like a rest of my life kind of thing, Certainly got enough mission and juice to be the thing. It kind of combines all of the things that I'm passionate and excited about and would want to see in the world, which is why this is exciting also.
Yeah.
Yeah. The weeding, the timing, and that I find always curious, right? Is how things show up, when they show up, who shows up. And so the opportunity here to kind of pull the threads that everybody's bringing and see what comes of that. One of the things that comes to mind for me is, when the vision I first had of like, when we talk about like, how do we present this idea of the more beautiful world, and to try and simplify the message, first of all, just for amongst ourselves, and to share with others that we want to step into the circle. And I created those 3 circles, that idea of nurturing our senses. And that there's the sense of community, the sense of place, and the sense of story. And that those overlapping 3 circles, everything can be approached pretty much. And that overlappingness of it is when we are truly tuned into interbeingness. So the sense of story, that circle there is what I want to explore with you further, Ari, and with your activated storytelling and the commons. That to me is the commons. That is that circle. And so, I would like to play there with you more in that realm.
Yeah.
And see how that grows. And then my thought was, and so it's already, to me, it's like, oh, okay, Ari's that person. Because to me, it was like growing the circle and people stepping into it, as we've talked about, Paul, since the beginning. And it's like, oh, Ari showed up and stepped into the sense of story circle. You're that guy now. It's like awesome. And not only that, you're coming with the whole story of what the story needs to happen for the story.
I've been thinking a lot about
the
kinds of stories that do this.
Exactly. And then, you know, there's the other circles I've been tuning into that would touch on the sense of place and the sense of community. And there's a lot of overlapping. And then, you know, where does the human body and health and all that come into play within those circles? And I've had some discussions with other people about, you know, who would be the first to step into those circles to help configure and conjure up what we need to articulate and bring others into that circle, for it to grow and flourish. And then as they overlap and the people start intermingling, a production will be born, a platform, a place to go and be in this ProtoPia and participate in it will emerge. I have no doubt.
Yeah. Coherency in the community, you know. Like, think about how good of a job the Charles thing did of making us all coherent, you know, amongst each other, to be able to come up with this. It's like that. It has to. I think storytelling is not enough, basically, is what I'm saying. I think story is part of the puzzle, and I like how you have it. And because without community, it's not integrated. It's just a, you know, even if it's interactive storytelling, it's still like an external thing. And I mean, stories can change people's lives, and films and, you know, media can do that, can seep ideas into the culture in really powerful and instant ways. But without that piece of the puzzle, the community, the kind of coherency and the integration of the community and having that space to do that, it's just another thing, you know. Like, I remember, I always think about when The Matrix first came out, those guys were very influenced by Ken Wilber and, you know, integral theory and all this stuff. Like, they had really done their homework, I guess, women now, and the Wachowskis, and they were on it was like a podcast then. It was like 2002, but it was like, I think it was like it was them and Ken Wilber in conversation, and they were like, yeah, I mean, we made the thing, you know, we made the thing and made $1 billion. We were like, it's going to change the world. It's going to wake everyone up, you know. Like, we made a meta movie about awakening, and everyone got it and everyone loved it, and we baked it into this, you know, action film meets sci-fi meets kung fu movie, everything you could hope for, and everyone got it and everyone loved it. And then the next blockbuster came out. Like, they really thought it was gonna, and in some ways it has changed the world. It was the 20 years, and they were, you know, how much it gets references and referenced, and not just in spiritual circles, but like, it made a huge dent. But at the time, they were just like disillusioned by how you would make this thing, it would be the zeitgeist of the culture, but the culture wouldn't change enough. Then there would just be some other blockbuster. And so yeah, it struck me that without the integration in the community, all those people that got the sense of awakening watching something like that just eventually went back to sleepwalking, you know, or went back to their game A, you know, old story lives, and just thought it was a cool movie.
That's why I like so much that you title it Activated, you know, because it means you're doing something thereafter. You're not just listening, but something's happening that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I always think about that, because it's like, yeah, Avatar also, I think 10 years later, probably similar moments and even bigger, probably helped, you know.
What was that?
Avatar, I think.
Avatar, yeah.
10 years later again. And then maybe more recently, like Black Panther was maybe the last Protopian movie. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Matrix is like dystopia, so I wouldn't count. I think Avatar and Black Panther are more Protopian, but the Matrix it allows the others to come, I guess.
Yeah, and the film that I reference in my talks is Arrival.
Yeah, Arrival is Protopian. Yeah.
Yeah, because I say, you know, this seems to resonate with people, the idea that language creates new realities.
Yep.
And
and there's no bad guys. There's no bad guys.
No.
Bad guys is just the bad instinct of the way humanity's set up now, which is the story separation, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, the word that's coming to me is this this Daniel Schmattenberger idea of conscious evolution.
Yeah.
We've been through this epoch, we're still in it, of tool-based evolution. And that now we're moving into a period of not tool-based evolution, because essentially our tools can just destroy us. We could disappear in the next 10 seconds if the right button is pressed. That's where we've got to. That's the conclusion of tool-based evolution.
Yeah.
So and if you then take so now we may move into this period of conscious evolution. Entirely.
Yeah.
We're really at the beginning stages of this, without the kind of stories, without the platforms. And again, that's one of the things I talk about, is going from unconscious evolution to tool-based evolution. Again, taking Daniel Schmattenberger's ideas to conscious evolution. So then I'm saying to the organizations, what's your conscious evolution?
Right.
What do you want to consciously evolve into as a group of individuals?
Yeah. I love it.
What was kind of coming to me when you were talking, Ari, was the idea that or maybe it was when you were doing Mark, was the idea that the content could just emerge in the sense that if we create, I'm already getting people saying, can we come on to MBW24? We've got a great story. We're doing this, and we're doing that. Can we come on? And I'm saying, well, I don't know yet, because we haven't got that schedule. But it's almost like if we could create a platform a bit like Vimeo that would allow people to, in a way, tell their story and then load it into almost like the lobby, the green room, that then we then almost kind of create the 24 through people contributing their, if you like, their candidacy for being on it. And of course we would then they have a platform, so long as it fits in with some principles or mantras of what we're doing. And in a way, instead of us sort of forcing the content production down. Hi,
Luna.
Luna was feeling a little sick today, so she didn't go to school.
Oh, she gets to stay home with Dad. How nice.
Yeah, that looks fun. Yeah, one of the advantages.
That was as long as she could hang without Dad being in the premises.
Yeah. So that was an idea that, it's almost like, could we have a situation where people, when the website launches, how would you like to take part? How would you like to stay informed? Or do you have a story to tell? In which case, record your story and load it up to this place, because we might find that the content emerges.
This is what I talked about with Grace. Actually, I was laughing on my call with her last week about, the other morning I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I can see it so clearly. We're not actually producing anything. We're creating the platform for it to emerge from. So for example, in the sense of story, starting sooner than later on the website, there you could step into Ari's activated story commons, and you learn what an activated story is about, and you go and produce your stories and you bring it back and you share it with the community about your sense of place or whatever it is that's in your story that's been active, and I can just see it so clearly that, like you said, Paul, people are just showing up and becoming part of this without us having to do anything other than provide the chispas, the sparks, and then the platform, so to speak, which is again where I think Duke is, but the natural platform is what exists now, and that's what I think we've got to work with, and we need to work with it well until something else comes along, which is part of this story, because people are evolving new ways to be together, which is a part of this new community, and it's even a sense of place. Being virtual is a sense of place as well. So all of this is coming together, and all we have to do is keep the doors open. so to speak. And I just, and now with your activated storytelling at Commons, and I just love how the conversations wander when we leave it open like this. I also know that we do want to attempt to get some things accomplished. So I am going to kind of break up this meeting into the two parts. You know, one being we just had a beautiful open conversation that led to all sorts of places that I'm sure are going to inspire others that listen in onto the video as well, and gives a nice background into Ari and more of your thinking, Paul. But also I wanted to bring up that we are going to start working on the website, and we'll need some practical things to happen. Duke and Grace have talked about a place to host it. I'm still not sure where that is. Ari, you had mentioned maybe there's some people that might help with design. That was one of the things that came up in our group. Who's going to take on the design and help us? Grace and I were going to work on content, and then we'll think about assets. But I don't know if there was something you wanted or somebody you wanted to bring into that circle.
Yeah, I can think about that a little more and see if it's the right fit for sure.
Okay.
And I've invited Imi.
Is Imi, I don't know what, can you share with us a little bit of her background since she's not here to do that herself?
Imi's my stepdaughter. She's 22. She's just creative along a lot of different realms, from photography to art. She's also started to get a little bit into website design, calligraphy. She also is a performer, dancer, florist. She's just like a creative being, really. And so because she's got a little bit of familiarity using Squarespace, and she's attracted to MBW24, I said, come along.
Great. With
that sort of, in that kind of context.
Okay, great. And then I also know that Ari also has some expertise, or also knows some people maybe that we can share with Rose when we get ready to do social media, so that the activated storytelling is also, you know, present through those channels, right? And so we'll be developing those circles. What else? Does anybody else want to bring? We still have a chunk of time here. I know you've got your hands there full, Ari, with Luna. But is there anything else that you want to bring to our attention before next week? Paul, are you going to be available, or what's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm available. I'm wondering, just on a kind of, since we're now on the sort of practicals, whether having a sort of set time each week is easier for us to have, and then people join if they can. But I'm kind of conscious that by doing that, we then end up with a time that might work well for some people, but less well for other people. I don't know, should it, you know, one of the nice things about that is you always know it's Tuesday at this particular time, and it sort of gets into your head. Yeah. On the other hand, you know, so that's a kind of just I like the idea of regular check-ins for people who are involved in this, and as new people come in.
Yeah, I think so. I like that too. Nancy, who offered to help with a group calendar, or anybody from your group who, you know, can help with those tools. When she comes back this next week, I think next week what I'm going to try and do is round up that we do have a group calendar, so that it's there and people can actually say and put it whether or not they're going to be available. Because sending out emails all the time and trying to loop people into the conversation is a bit challenging.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to see one of those. That happen pretty soon, a group calendar, and then people can let us know whether they can make it. But we'll have a standing meeting then, and if enough people say, hey, you know what, it'd be really good, or we'll have breakouts, you know, from the different groups that are working. So yeah, but I think for now, starting, you know, trying to hook in with everybody this coming week. Sounds like everybody will be available next Tuesday, so we'll put it on that tack again. Okay. I guess it was a question of what time. whether it was 9 or 9:30. Ari, that was something to do with also with you on Tuesdays. What would be good for you?
Yeah, it's just a little easier if I'm dropping her off for it to be a little later. But if it's a problem, let's just keep it at 9 and I join 15 minutes later.
Okay, but so we could push it a little bit. So and for you guys, that's late in the afternoon, right, Paul?
Yeah, but that's fine. I think what we've discovered when you start to get people like Rose involved and Imi and Shim, you know, that they're kind of doing stuff, and sometimes they can and sometimes they can't. They don't have like a kind of set patterns of things.
Yeah, and also without specific tasks or things that we're doing as breakout groups or whatever. I can imagine.
But also, you know, they're happy to work on things in the meantime, but they like the idea of, I think the experience of checking in is an important part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is sort of community building.
Yes, and as the group grows, what I've seen with the other Zoom groups that I've been participating in is as it grows, it just the dynamic of what it becomes different, right?
Yeah.
And then you have your more specific breakout groups that are doing specific tasks or whatnot. But these then the weekly is, you know, you're going to have 20 people in what is, you know, coming up, you know, in the not too distant future, I imagine, and people stepping in and out all the time.
Yeah, I mean, my picture is that there'll be several hundred people involved in, I'll say, producing this.
Yeah, different layers.
And obviously that's going to have to work in different clusters or circles. Yeah.
Okay, so anything else for today? Again, I didn't want to try and accomplish anything specific. I know I'm going to work with Grace on content. We're going to share that with the group. Ari's going to look into somebody that can support Amy in any way. And then also going to try and loop Eric. I think they just launched the museum piece that he was working on, so tied up with. See if he wants to loop back in. If there's anybody else you guys want to bring into the circle.
Well, I've got a lot of people I want to bring in, but you know, I'm so biding my time.
Okay.
And I think
when I say that, I mean like at these stages, at this stage.
So I don't think as new people pop up, mm-hmm. I'm sort of doing that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Then I think we can wrap.
Okay.
Yeah, or we can tend to their days. Are you good? Is he still there?
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Ari. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Paul, will you send out the recording, please?
I will.
Thank you. All right, take care.
Bye.